Hi, my name is Corey Goss, and in this video, we'll be looking at some of the signal comparison features we have within our SimVision debug solution. Specifically, we'll be covering these topics. So I'm now going to switch over to our demo. And in this demo, we have a mismatch between two simulations. And we're not quite sure exactly what the mismatch might be. So we're going to actually open up SimVision with two different waveform databases. And before I do that, I'll just do a quick ls here. You can see we have waves 1 and waves. Now one of them passes. Let's just say that it's the waves.shm file, and we're looking for what might be the differences between these two sets of data. We think that they should be exactly the same. So what I can do is I'm opening up SimVision in post-process with all the waveform databases loaded, and I'm going to do a bit of a manual inspection here, and I'm going to see if I can't look for any mismatches. So I'm going to take my top level signals. I'm just going to say Control W to send those out to the waveform window. And let's say I'm going to put a small divider in here, and now I'm going to send all of the same signals out to the waveform database. And I'm going to adjust the name here so that I'm showing both the database name and the signal. So you can see one is waves, the other is waves 1. Now, just visually inspecting is kind of tedious, and it's not, it's not very automated in any way whatsoever. If I'm going to compare two signals, let's say WB cell and WB cell 30, it looks like they might be somewhat similar from this point forward in both. So let's see if I can do a quick comparison just to verify that. So what I'm going to do is, first, it looks like there's a difference in time, and that time looks like it's about 150 nanoseconds. So I'm going to take this WB cell, and I'm actually going to shift it from waves 1. And the way I do that is I say Format, Shift, and I'm going to shift it over 150 nanoseconds. Click OK. Now it looks like the waveforms are kind of lining up a little bit better here. Right, I can see if I go on the edge, they both have the value 8. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight both signals, and I'm going to say Create Comparison. And what this does is this adds a new comparison into the waveform window just for these two signals. One of them is the shifted waves 1 signal, the other is the WB cells signal. And it looks as though from the point 8 forward, actually from this point forward, they are exactly the same. And if I zoom out full, I can see there's no other mismatches. So when I do this, it shows me a red color here for any location within these two signals where the values are different. Now, I could do this probably for any or all of the signals in my database, but many times I'm asked the question, do you have an automated way of actually comparing two different databases together and comparing all of the signals hierarchically? And the answer to that is yes. We actually have a tool called SimCompare, and for that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to access that to say Windows, Tools, SimCompare Manager. Now, this can also be launched directly from the SimVision command line with a -SimCompare option, and then this will pull up our SimCompare Manager as well. Now, I have two different waveform databases. I can just expand those out here. I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to shrink down the packages here so you can see that we have waves here and waves 1 here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare all of the signals from my, let's say, my DUT down. So here's my DUT, it's the UR-DUT. And the way that I do this is I start with one database, so in this case waves 1, and I can click and drag and put this into what I would call my golden reference. Okay? You can also just click the plus sign here, and that will add it as well, any selected items. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to select the same level of hierarchy in the waves database, and I'm going to click and drag that over. So now I've got the same level of hierarchy, two different databases, and all I'm going to do now is just click this Submit Compare button here. And this will perform a comparison on every signal from this level in the hierarchy down. So I do a quick Submit Compare, and we can see we have 1,558 errors that are found. Now to view the results, we just click this View Results button here. and this sends it to the waveform window, and it expands out the SimCompare sidebar. So I'm just going to actually select all the signals here, say Control A, and I'm going to delete this just to clear up this waveform window, and we're going to analyze these signals here. So this is showing us all the mismatches at a hierarchical level. I can show entries with no differences in them as well, or I can just filter those away, and that'll clear up the hierarchy a bit. Now in brackets here you can see all of the different mismatches that occur for this particular signal. Now what I find more useful than a hierarchical view, especially when there's many mismatches, is to look at time view. So I'm going to click time view. Now this shows me when the very first mismatch occurred, and the first mismatch occurred at time 50 nanoseconds, and this is pretty important, right, because this tells you when the two databases started deviating. And I can see here that they started deviating with the reset signal. So if I click reset, this will show me that in the waves databases, the two different ones, there's actually a difference in the way that reset was applied at the start of the sim. And if I look up here, the cursor minus baseline tells us there's a 150 nanosecond difference in the way that reset was applied. So that might be interesting. I can expand out the next one here, and I can also see there's miscompares on various other signals. And if I send one of those to the waveform, it looks as though there might be, and I can measure this. Yeah, so it looks like waves 1 and waves are actually off by, again, another 150 nanoseconds. So it seems as though these are all shifted out. So I'm wondering whether, if I don't align these two reset signals, will I not be able to cure up many of these other issues that are occurring later in the simulation? So now let's go back and let's do that. Let's actually tweak our results in the SimCompare Manager. So I'm going to go back over to my SimCompare Manager, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to edit the previous comparison that I've done. So I click Begin Edit, and now I expand out my options. And you can see here that there's options to shift the database signals. You can specify a threshold. You could specify a tolerance, meaning before or after a signal edge. How far out do you want to actually ignore any differences, right? There's also transaction options, and there's also some run options, which we'll look at in a minute. So in this case, I want to shift out one of the signals by 150 nano. And in fact, what I want to do is the waves 1 database, right? Because that's where the reset drops a little bit earlier. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to shift the waves 1 database by 150 nanoseconds. And then I'm going to select Submit Compare again. And we can see that we had 1558 errors found before, but now we're down to 567 errors. So I'm going to send these results out now to the SimCompare Manager. And again, I'm going to select all and just clear this out. And I'm going to take a look now at where the issues might be. And it looks as though there's a lot of startup condition problems. At 0 seconds, there's differences. And this might make sense, right? Because if we shift out reset, then sure, the data that we're sending from our UVCs might actually be affected. But if there's some startup conditions that are set initially at time 0, then shifting one out by 150 nanoseconds is really going to create new mismatches. So what we might want to do is we might want to actually ignore any mismatches due to the startup conditions and just start checking for the remainder of the simulation. It actually looks as though there's startup conditions that are flagged all the way up to time 150 nanoseconds, which kind of makes sense because that's exactly what we shifted by. So there's ways to get around this, and I'll go back to my SimCompare Manager. And now let's tweak our results again. So I'm going to begin and edit again. And now I'm going to take a look at the run options down here. And I'm going to start comparing from time 151 nanoseconds, just after the point where we shifted out all of the signals. Now I'm going to click Submit Compare again. Now it looks like we have a successful comparison, meaning no mismatches were found at all. So it seems as though in this particular case, that reset was the problem. Indeed, if we shifted out that reset, we could probably make the two simulation databases match. And the root of this, actually, if you further investigate, what I found in the code was actually somebody had commented out the hard reset and actually had made it actually run a little bit longer. And that's what caused this mismatch to occur. So that's a basic walk through some of the SimCompare interactive features of the SimVision debug solution. Now, we can also run this in batch mode. And I want to show you how to do that very, very quickly. I'm going to close down all these GUIs. And now what I'm going to do is just launch SimCompare right from the command line with a -tickle option. Okay? And now I'm at the SimCompare command prompt. So we can do similar type of operations that we did before. For instance, we need to specify a golden model. And in this case, the golden model I'm going to say is waves.shm. And I'm going to say the test reference database is actually waves1.shm. And if I look at the databases that I have loaded now, I can see that waves is the golden, waves1 is the test. Now what I can do is I can say things like compare, and I think it was uartctrl top.uartdut. That was the level that we were comparing at before. And I could say compare, and it shows me a summary of the results. And I think if I type report, this shows me information about the types of mismatches that were occurred and where. And here are the signals from the golden and the test expression and where they mismatched. So this same type of information can be obtained from launching SimCompare from the command line. So that's a quick walk through some of the signal comparison capabilities that we have within our SimVision debug solution.